Welcome back, everyone, to the LawCast. I am Chris Santana, and this is Melanie Philly. We are both solicitors here at MJT Law, and we're here for another week.
Here for another week. Happy days.
And I thought we'd start off with another instalment of the much loved,
love it,
kind of recurring thing that we do here, and it's Chris's Commission Crazy Cases.
Yes.
Triple C's.
The triple C's.
And it's about a employee who didn't put an emoji.
That's right.
Yeah, so from what I understand, you have an employee who was texting their boss.
Yeah, look, this this case is off the gazette for a couple of reasons. We'll talk about the interesting facts of the case first, and then we'll talk about it being off the gazette for a completely different reason, which is the kind of the incidental part of it. So yeah, absolutely. So in this case, we've got a woman who's working for a restaurant, and these restaurants are everywhere.
Right.
They're in China. They're in here. There's a pile of them. And there's lots of kind of cooks in this kitchen. Oh, screws my pun.
Yes.
Because it seems like there's lots of people who are involved and in control and touching the pie. And it's just
so this is like a situation where there's no like direct zone manager or anything like that. There is just people management.
Yeah, and there's some obvious people who should be managing, and some obvious people who are managing, and some people.
And they're not the same people.
And there's some people on the edges who are getting themselves, getting jiggy with it too.
Too many chefs in the kitchen.
It's just so many chefs in the kitchen. So that's one really interesting thing about this. And this poor girl is a casual employee who was it permanent and turned casual, and there was all these questions. So she found herself terminated, the poor poppet, after a while of employment, a couple of years. And the termination was because of an ongoing kind of degeneration of a relationship between not her manager, not her boss, so the owner of the restaurant, but the partner.
As in the business partner?
No, as in the life partner of the person who owns the business.
Right. So no one involved, not really involved in the company, not in a
involved in such a way where they waltz in and pretend they own the place.
But they don't actually.
But they're not actually the manager or the boss or so, as far as I know. I mean, you could write in and tell me how wrong I am, but and the relationship just gets worse and worse and worse over a number of weeks. This person was the employee who was terminated was engaged by the company to open this restaurant, kind of manage it and get on with it. Then we've got this woman who comes in every now and again and kind of
you're not doing this right, and
all this sort of bizarre, and there's lots of conflict and lots of friction. And then one day she couldn't turn up to the employee couldn't turn up to work, and apparently this particular restaurant has always been under pressure for staff, and the employee will argue that it's because they keep removing staff from this restaurant to work at a different one of their restaurants because that one's more profitable and busier. But leaving less staff to do the busy times.
It's almost a snowballing effect because then they can't make it more profitable because the service is bad.
Anyway, so it all comes to a head when she couldn't turn up, and there was no replacement, and there was all this problems, and she writes in and says she can't come to work, and without the smiley face, people are shouting once she turns it back up to work. There is a massive fight that happens, and she's out. Files an unfair dismissal application. So that's kind of the gist of the facts. There's a pile of other facts. I mean, the decision is 20 pages long, but we're just gonna stick to some easy stuff here. So there's some other things that I really like about this case. First of all, she files this unfair dismissal, and there's a whole pile of jurisdictional objections.
Right.
So
on what basis?
She's not employed, she didn't get fired, she's a casual, she's not employed long enough, all these kind of jurisdictional objections, and they had to sit there and sift through them all first. For those of you who don't know, when one files an unfair dismissal application here in Australia, first of all you have to be the right type of employee, but we in this case they were, and an employer can make a jurisdictional objection. They would call them jurisdictional objections because they're kind of threshold questions.
Yeah, irrespective of how unfair or harsh, unjust, unreasonable the termination might be, if someone doesn't fall within the jurisdiction,
that's right.
then
they're out. or they haven't worked there for the period of time with which they have to in order to be eligible to file. They're out.
And they might have other actions, but not in an unfair dismissal.
Didn't file in time, you're out.
Yep.
There's a lot of these objections. And one of them, interesting enough, is not fired.
On what? So
I didn't fire her.
That seems like the most illogical of them, because I imagine it was quite unequivocal.
Well, the language, get out, you're not coming back, all that sort of thing.
Very determinative, very employment ending.
There was this discussion about whether she resigned because of the poisonous working environment and it was constructive or forced resignation.
Right.
Yeah, it was just, the whole thing was just...
Because this all comes out of the argument they've had when she comes back.
Yeah,
and there's just...
And what I love about this is it's Commissioner Simpson.
Right, yeah.
And Commissioner Simpson just doesn't like the bullshit. There was so much of it in this case.
And they've just...
It's just, you know, and they go through it in a really kind of, you know, in a really kind of methodical way. The hearing went ahead on the 1st of July by telephone. Ms. Gordon appeared on her own behalf. The hearing was based on the evidence before me. I was satisfied that the applicant was dismissed, and the dismissal of Ms. Gordon was harsh, unjust and reasonable for the following reasons. And they just kind of go through.
They have to just work through all the various issues.
So what happened was, at the very end of it, it was found that the dismissal was unfair. It was completely unreasonable, and I'll see if I can find what Commissioner Simpson says about that, because it's... when it talks about remuneration, whilst there was some strain on the employment relationship at the time of the termination itself because of the relationship between Ms. Wang and the applicant, there appears to be no evidence that there were any concerns about the applicant's performance. Mm-hmm. And Ms. Chen made it clear in the written material that submitted for the respondent that he did not have any issue with the applicant's performance, and in fact it seems instructed Ms. Wang to attempt to resolve the issue, and it was clear from the evidence that did not make the offer to be re-employed, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there was so much there going on about all this. What I find absolutely fascinating is not only this is a completely insane case about someone being fired for not including a smiley face on the end of a text, which would have been difficult to read, but what happened next?
The way she was fired.
No, the whole matter itself. So she files this application. The respondent refuses to attend conciliation.
So they don't want to mediate whatsoever at the very least, so they basically would have done next to no work at that point.
Absolutely refused to attend. The respondent did not attend the directions hearing and indicated it did not wish to participate in the hearing. The conciliation before the commission conciliator did not take place, and the matter was allocated to me. That's what
so there's just no involvement whatsoever.
No involvement whatsoever. So they do eventually file some material, but at this point we've got nothing. They've got this woman who's been fired, and she's going, dude, I've been fired. And then they start all these objections. And what's really interesting for those who don't understand the process, when a employee files an unfair dismissal application, that application goes to the other side, the employer. The employer reads through it, files their own response, which is a template document that you get sent to fill in, and then the matter is set down for conciliation. Yeah. It's done over the telephone, and it's meant to help the parties get to a solution that doesn't involve a commissioner getting involved.
Yeah, and it's the very first thing, basically the very first thing you do in a matter, and it means that you might be able to sell it before basically anyone incurs significant legal fees.
Yeah, it's a brilliant way of solving the matters, and you've done the math on this. Conciliations are successful like 90% of the time, or some mad number, right?
I think it's something like 80% with, I think it's 2/3 in the first conciliation, and then an extra 20% of the entire portion in that next conciliation.
So there's hardly anybody left to go hearing. So incredibly successful. Well, there was absolutely no participation at all from the respondents.
So it's only going to one place. It's only going to a hearing.
It's going to a hearing, and Commissioner Simpson said, you know, the respondent did not attend the directions hearing, which is the hearing to say what's going on today and this is how we're going to manage it. And indicated they did not want to participate in the hearing and did not wish to file any material. So that's where they were at. Yeah. Eventually they did, And after the directions hearing, my chambers sent an email to the respondent and... Dear Mr. Chen, I refer to the above matter. The Commissioner advises that there are factual disputes that need to be resolved, including whether the respondent is a small business, less than 15 employees, whether the applicant was dismissed, and the Commissioner puts you on notice that the hearing of this matter will occur on a particular date by telephone. Chambers will send you notice of the listing shortly. The Commissioner again puts you to notice that you should not submit material in accordance with the directions. Should you not submit the material in accordance with directions, the matter will be decided in the absence of material from you. So it's really good to know that even if the other side don't file anything...
They don't participate, though.
It's not like it's a foregone conclusion, there's a rubber stamp, you're going to win. Because, in fact, they're still going to consider the evidence that you present and whether the Commissioner thinks on the facts that's presented before them at the time, whether or not it's been nudged.
Yeah, and the key difference between a commission, and in this case the Fair Work Commission, and a court is the Commissioner can ask questions, and they frequently do, at a hearing, and they might just simply cross-examine the applicant themselves.
Yep. So this happens all the time for applicants. Applicants fail to do what the Commission asks them to do all the time, and the matters are dismissed. But in this one, it just keeps rolling forward. The respondent finally gave something and said, blah, 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 please accept my apologies for the delayed response. I've summarised a personal statement for your review. Since I have no further information or evidence to provide, I confirm I will not attend the hearing.
So they don't want to take the stand.
And the hearing went ahead. That was it. So I'm satisfied that the applicant was dismissed. And so they said, at the hearing, based on the evidence before me, I was satisfied that the applicant was dismissed. And the dismissal of her was harsh, unjust and reasonable. So this is the other crazy part of this. We've got an applicant that filed an application. I mean, she's self-represented, so she's not spending money on legal fees. But the respondent didn't participate, basically at all. So put no money or effort into this. And yes, they lost. But what do you reckon the outcome was for that employee?
I think I've gone to the end, and I think she gets a measly $3,000, something like that. Presumably on the basis that she wasn't unemployed for that long.
$5,357.80 taxed.
And for her, that would be what, like 6 weeks, maybe 5-6 weeks.
It depends on his salary. It may be even less than that. You know, they went through what we call the Sprigg test and decided blah 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 blah. They just basically did that. And you look at that and you think she earned 4,000. Oh, it was a whole pile of like.
Nevertheless, it's not going to be.
It's a complete mess
weeks,
because
so.
on one week she'd earn one amount, another week she'd earn another amount. It was all over the place. 1,000 one month, 3,000 another week. You know, so it was all. But the fact is, they participated not at all. Spent no money, no effort, no time, no thinking, no anything, and all they had to pay is $5,000.
Yes,
the system's broken, my friend.
Well, in this way, they very much saved money.
They absolutely saved. They saved a bundle. For those who don't know, litigation of this type, to get all the way to the other side of a hearing, is bound to cost you at least $30,000 or $40,000.
Yes, but I'm going to caveat this a little bit and say this case is also a great example of some of the downsides in doing that, which is they lost.
They did lose.
And there's 20 pages there. I don't imagine it's particularly painting the greatest light. It's
not, but who the hell cares? It's a restaurant in the Gold Coast.
We're talking about it. It was on the news. You know, these things come out.
You think you're not of the view that all news is good news?
No.
Right.
No.
All publicity is good publicity.
No, especially.
You don't want to go and eat there?
I think especially in employment law where it can be very politicised.
Yes.
Where, depending on which side of the political sphere you're on, you can find yourself either an employee or an employer.
That's right.
Very much, at least in your views, that treating an employee poorly and making it open to the public for at least probably roughly about 50% of the population is going to be unpalatable.
Okay, so there might be 30 or 40 people out there who won't eat at that restaurant simply because they heard a case where someone had an unfair dismissal. Okay, that might make them feel sad, that might not make them feel sad. What about if they just sell...
What if they're like a wholesaler that doesn't have any
online
public
internet?
facing?
Who the hell cares? Or, you know, something consulting business that doesn't actually provide services really at all to anybody who's going to read this. You know, how do we advise our clients that it's a good idea to defend these matters when we've got a decision as crazy as that? I'm not saying that Commissioner Simpson didn't order the right amount of money. That's not what I'm saying here.
I think
that sort of figures are what we're seeing in a decision from the Fair Work Commission. The decision was not out of the ordinary. What I'm looking at is the bigger picture here. If you don't participate whatsoever, and these are the sort of the decisions that are coming out, all you're getting is an adverse decision that may or may not be publicised, that may or may not be remembered in 2 months' time.
No. What's the harm?
Why?
Where's your exposure?
This is broken. System's broken, dude.
What's your views on... Because at the moment, in a lot of other areas in that an employee may be able to file against an employer, there is pecuniary penalties. That is an amount of money that is not attributable to compensation. Doesn't
just because they did the wrong thing.
And it's purely for a deterrent effect.
There's plenty of sections in the Fair Work Act that provide for penalties for doing the wrong thing.
Now, interestingly, unfair dismissals are not one of those.
No! What the hell, dude?
Do you think we should be having pecuniary penalties?
I think we should rethink the jurisdiction altogether. I don't like the fact that you can not turn up to anything and not be penalised from a cost perspective. I don't like the fact that employees can start any type of vexatious claim and it doesn't matter. I don't like any of it. I don't like the timing that you have to file by. I don't like the system and the conciliations. I actually don't like any of it. I think the system is broken, and this is an end result of that broken system. If this person, let's say the company has been through an unfair dismissal application before, and I didn't look at all their subsidiaries online to find out if they had an adverse decision against them. But let's say they did, and they realise the adverse decision is going to be $5,000 to $10,000, and it'll cost them $30 or $40 to run. They would know from a commercial standpoint that it'd be cheaper for them to do nothing than it would be.
Which is exactly where penalties are aimed at targeting.
Yeah, and you can only get 6 months' pay, and it's capped at a high income salary of $162,000. Most people who are filing are in the $70,000 range or under. Even if you give them the full 6 months, it's still not the same as a litigation.
It's still cheaper.
It's still cheaper. Anyway, I'll get off my little soapbox about that, but that's why it's a Commissions Crazy in my view.
I think you're right. I think specifically for unfair dismissals, more than anything, there is a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things about that case is when we see cases all the time where there is what we call mutual destruction.
Yes.
Generally 2 people, I mean, in this case it was someone who wasn't actually involved in the business, but let's say they are. And the actions of the manager are generally not relevant. Well, they're not the person on trial here. And usually the applicant does something wrong.
Yeah.
Does something wrong, and remember that you only really need an operative reason to be the valid reason, and usually there might be a dispute and it might be completely legitimate, but the way they handle the dispute. And
the employee gets up to their own mischief in some way. Look, there were shouting fights. There was a relationship was going wrong. I just think this is a commission crazy because of why the person was terminated and the whole process around how they saved $1 gajillion by doing nothing. Yes. Crazy case.
Interestingly, it was. I mean, this case kind of made the news because it's just.
It's so out there.
It's so out there.
Fired for an emoji, dudes.
Yeah.
Not putting an emoji in.
But. And I can't speak to the veracity of the survey, but a survey was done, and how many percentage of people do you think should say that you should put an emoji in a text to a boss?
Oh, I'm thinking 0, but I'm thinking that's a wrong number.
60% of people, 60% believe that if you write a text to your boss...
Did they ask 12-year-olds?
I don't know, because I believe that that's unprofessional personally.
Anybody has a point of view on whether they should put an emoji to a text to their boss? I'm thinking If you're going to err on the side of caution,
don't put
let's just say don't do it. Wow.
But 60%, I don't think 60% of people think that you should be fired if you don't do it. But
just taking a different spectrum, it does surprise me how many people think it's perfectly acceptable to send dick pics.
Yeah, true.
So
maybe people just don't. Maybe it's just the
and all those emojis that relate to that sort of thing. Yeah, it does surprise me.
Okay, true.
I'm going to segue out of this really badly by saying there's another matter on my desk. It's not a commissions crazy, but it is a crazy matter, and this is about an employee. So this employee was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, and what I've got here in front of me is the appeal. The offender.
For 10 years, you might as well appeal.
Yeah, the offender had to appeal the sentence, saying it was manifestly excessive.
Yep.
He failed, so I'll just put that out there. Yep, 10 years was perfectly fine.
Right.
And there was some language around the offence that he did at the time. At the time, had like a 12-year penalty, but then it was raised after he offended to 30 years. Right. So there was this kind of jibber jabber, I'm going to say, around that. This guy did something quite spectacular. He was working, this is an employee who was basically stealing money, and they all do it. But he stole, I think in total, about $4.5 million, keeping $2 for himself. And there was this massive scheme, where he'd got together with a couple other contractors, and they were over-invoicing for the monies. This guy was in control of accepting the invoices, making sure the invoices were legitimate, and then paying them.
Right, so he's got.
So there's no line of defence here.
No one else can. So from someone invoicing to the money coming out, there's no one else touched.
No one else dealing with it.
Right.
Pure trust. Yeah. Pure trust. So there's no line of defence at all. Yeah. And so what he did is he got together with a few of his, I'm going to say, more reliable contractors, reliable for him contractors, and basically did a scheme. Said, you do the work, charge me, and it's meant to be $1,000, charge me $2. I'll give you 500 of that, and I'll give myself 500. So you're getting 1,500.
The extra 1,000.
Yeah, you're getting yourself 1,500, but you're getting 500 on the side, tax free. I'll get 500 on the side.
Right.
So that's basically the scheme.
And you do enough invoices, and you can get to $4 million very quickly.
Yeah, and you do it for like 5 years.
And
just unbelievable. So the applicant would issue his false invoices or fabricated contractors and credited the money owed. So he also created contractors that didn't exist.
Right.
And then paid
himself.
Those contractors.
Yeah.
That didn't exist.
For work that didn't.
For work they didn't do.
Yeah. Because the contractor doesn't.
Because the contractor doesn't exist.
But how did he? I suppose for those ones, he would have had to get one of the other contractors to actually do the work.
No. There's no work to be done. It was an elaborate fraud experiment. So this is quite a large organisation. Because it got into my head, who the hell, because I run a business, and I would notice $1 million going missing. So who the hell doesn't notice that? But of course you don't notice it if it's not just $1 million. And it's the quintessential scam, isn't it? We know, we go through our bank statements because it's that $12 one that turns into 1,000, that turns into all your money, because they take the little bit, see if anybody notices.
So how did this guy get caught at the end?
He got slammed. I think one day he was sick or something insane like that.
Always how it happens.
Yeah, and he just got slammed. Absolutely slammed. So what I wanted to say is, not only is this a fascinating case about someone going to jail for 10 years for essentially defrauding his boss and taking $1 gajillion, fraudulently obtained $1.85 million by manipulating invoices received. On a further 18 occasions, he created fraudulent invoices allegedly for work completed at childcare centres, this is a cleaning company, that they didn't clean. So they just produced invoices, didn't do the work, didn't even need to do the work, because this is the other thing. Those companies aren't complaining that the work isn't done because they didn't need to do it. It's completely insane. So it was approximately 6 years, dishonestly obtained $4.5 million, and he took 1.2 of his own. So
it's an interesting case in the way that it's a I suppose a very large version of what we see actually quite frequently.
All the time.
People are probably shocked to find out just how much money gets stolen from employers, and
time stealing. It's all there. You know, your employee
often
turns up 2 minutes late to work. They've already stolen 2 minutes of your time.
But I mean, all sorts of things. You know, not putting in timesheets correctly.
Yeah.
Claiming on
the actual physical money of it. You know, claiming that you didn't take a lunch break when you did, and therefore getting the money for that. Down to swapping out shifts, so it makes it more. You know, and you didn't do that shift, and there's all those ones. So there's all the obvious ones, but then there's the less obvious ones. There's the sneaky ones. You know, you're stealing toilet paper. You're stealing time.
Everyone knows about stealing the pens. Yeah, pens are always going missing.
It's employee fraud is rife. It depends what level you care about it.
Yeah, and that one of the interesting things is, of course, all of this is a reason to terminate, right? But one of the interesting things that we see coming on our table a lot is there's no real criminal element to them. You know, as in they've done crimes. I mean, these are, from what I understand, to be
what I'm
crimes.
amazed as how many clients come to us who know this is happening and still don't terminate. I just, you know, there's so much space there for your employees. You don't need to give it to them. You don't need to have the same person doing payroll who is the same person doing pay rises.
Yeah.
Because the payroll officer will give themselves a pay rise. It's just, and it happens all the time. Or the same person who is in control of accounting for how much leave has been taken is not accounting for it for themselves. It's constant, but they never get fired, even when they get found out.
Yeah.
And they get to stay. Anyway, so
it's a lot more prevalent, and I think
it's everywhere.
For our employer listeners out there,
oh my goodness,
I think they'll find that it's going on a fair bit.
Yeah, and you've got to decide what your level of care is. But when there's money walking out the door and you don't know how much it is, audits, guys, do something about it. Those employees who are stealing from you, I know it's hard. Get rid of them. Just get rid of them. I shouldn't be saying that. I'll probably get sued. But anyway, look, if you guys need any help, let us know. But I just thought these two cases were mad. Absolutely mad.
Just
$4.5 million, dude.
Off the reserve, and getting fined because you had to run in.
He gets 10 years jail for stealing $4.5 million, and he complains about the sentence.
Oh, I'd have a crack.
He was lucky not to get a longer one.
I know.
You know, like that dude who killed that lady in South Africa who complained about the sentence.
And he got a longer one. But, you know, the difference between 10 and 12, I mean... But, anyway, on that note, I think we'll have to wrap it up. We will see everyone again in a couple of weeks. And if
you're going to Splendour in the Grass?
I am going to Splendour.
You can tell us all about it.
I will. All right. See you, everyone.